I'm Matt from Tubby Tarot, and you are watching Book Talk. Now, tell me something. Are classic books really worth reading? I have been asked this by a couple of my friends, because they all know that I love reading, and a lot of them want to get into reading things like classic books, because all they hear about me sprouting is like classics, the classics, the classics. And, I think they get really, really tired of me doing this. But they say to me, like, okay, but I've had a few say to me, okay, but are they really worth reading? Why should I read a classic book? I can pick up a Stephen King. I don't have to pick up a James Joyce, So I say, yes, the classics are worth reading. But, and there's a big but, okay, in this sentence. Just because it says it's a classic, okay, doesn't mean it's interesting. And I am of the opinion that if it bores you, don't read it. What is the point of sitting down with Wuthering Heights if you're going to A, hate the language, B, you don't give a shit about Heathcliff, C, the book is just, the type is this tiny. Yes, it's a classic book, but you're going to hate it. You're not interested in it, okay? So if you're going to be bored, don't read it, okay? Why punish yourself? Reading is about enjoyment. It is not about punishment. So yes, Wuthering Heights is a classic. I highly recommend it. It's a really cool story. But for some of you, you're going to be bored, all right? And then you're going to be like, oh, I tried reading the classics and they shit. You didn't, sweetie. You tried reading Wuthering Heights, which brings me on to my next point. If you are going to read classic books, or if you want to start reading classic books, start with a genre that you know today and that you are interested in. So if you read a lot of Anne Rice books, you know that you are into A, Gothic literature, B, vampires. Now you say to yourself, okay, Anne Rice is a modern author. However, she does set her books in later time periods, okay? She moves around in time, but they're set in later time periods. So you already have that kind of background knowledge about London or America or whatever in the 1800s or whatever, and that kind of appeals to you. And so why don't you go and try and read a book like Carmilla, which is the very first book about vampires, was released even before Dracula. That's a real classic, okay? You know you like vampires, and you know you like that kind of whole olden day kind of setting because you're reading Anne Rice. So go and try reading Carmilla, all right? Or Dracula's Guest, which was also written, apparently it's the first chapter of Dracula that was never included in the book. If you enjoy reading sci-fi books, or if you enjoy reading books about adventures, try and go and read a Jules Verne book, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It's sci-fi. It's kind of almost steampunk, okay? And of course, it's great adventure. They go under the sea and there are all these creatures and they get attacked by an octopus and there's all kinds of stuff. So that's like really cool. You enjoy that sort of thing, all right? If you love adventure stories, going into the jungle, you read stuff like, I can't actually think of a modern author, but if you like that sort of thing, boys' own adventure stuff, why don't you read H. Rider Haggard? He wrote King Solomon's Mines, a fantastic adventure story. Why don't you read his other book called She, an even better story about these guys who go into the African forest jungles and they found this lost tribe. It's all very exciting, and you know you dig that sort of thing. So why would you go and read Wuthering Heights when there's no adventure, there's nothing there? It's somber, it's dark, it's soggy. You're going to hate it. Whereas if you read H. Rider Haggard, it's exciting, it's stuff, and there's leeches attacking these people, and there's all kinds of shit going on. You can enjoy it because that's the kind of contemporary literature that you read. Okay, so that is a really, really big point that I need to make. Okay, the other thing about reading old literature, classics, okay, reading the classics, is it exposes you to a lot of words you would never be exposed to, so your vocabulary will grow. And the other thing is you will learn how to read English in a slightly different way, because classic books, old books, that are written before the 1900s, the sentence structure is very different. So although it's not old medieval English, which is fuck hard to read, it's still different. So what you would do is you would have to focus a lot more on what you are reading, and therefore it slows you down and you take in more of the story. Also, you're going to learn new words, which is always an absolute pleasure to do, you know. The other thing with classic literature, the absolute classics, is that it has a direct link to pop culture. A lot of stuff that we take for granted today actually comes from classic literature, okay? So it's a good way of reading something and suddenly going, oh, now I know what that saying means, you know? Now I understand that concept, a concept that is made popular in our time, but we don't quite know where it comes from. Generally, it would come from a much earlier time period, okay? So a lot of ideas are rooted, a lot of our pop culture ideas are rooted in the classics. So that's another really cool thing. Okay, and as I said to you, it teaches reading classics because of the sentence structure and the words and the way it's all set up. It tends to slow you down quite a bit, and so you have to focus more on the story and what you're reading, so that you will actually absorb a lot more of the actual book than reading a modern book. A modern book tends to be you can tend to read a modern book very quickly, okay, because we are very, very familiar with the words that we are reading. And often we don't even read all the words that are on the page, but that's a subject for a whole different video. With classics, because the sentence structure and the English is slightly different to what you're used to, you slow down to focus, and therefore you absorb more. And of course, my favorite thing about reading the classics is I earn bragging rights. If you can tell me at a dinner party that you have read Wuthering Heights, I'll be like, oh my God, that is so cool. I never read it. I found it really boring. Maybe I should give it another go. And you are a 22-year-old person. You're like, oh my God, the story is so fantastic. You've got this guy Heathcliff and he's a real bastard. And you get poor old Kathy who's like shunted out onto the moors and she's crying and she wants to come in. And you can get the drama. You can get the, oh my God, my hair is rising on my arms. I'm so excited about this book. You can brag about reading this book, and you can actually influence people to go and invest time in the classics that they like, that resonate with them. So read stuff that you are interested in. Read stuff that resonates with you. Read stuff that makes you happy. And yes, read the classics, because the classics aren't only Emily Bronte and Charles Dickens. There is H.G. Wells, there is Wilkie Collins, there's murder, poisoning, mayhem, bigamy, incest. Oh my God, the list goes on and on and on. Magic, witchcraft. It depends on what genre you're reading, okay? But let me tell you something, when it comes to the classics, there's something in there for everybody. You just got to root around a little, nose around a little. I'm Matt from Tubby Tarot, and you've been watching Book Talk. I will see you next Thursday.